Look at UFC 200. If Conor were to make the card, and we'll get into this right now, if Conor were to make the card because of all this conflict, might be the biggest UFC of all time.
Oh yeah,
bigger than
this only helps
UFC
out
100
more.
that you were on.
Absolutely.
Which I think UFC 100 is by far the most stacked and best card. Me and Rogan have argued this.
Said that, yeah.
I think it's the best of all time. When you look at the names, the way things went down is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you look at UFC 200. And now with this whole controversy,
this added a lot to it.
All this stuff, there's so much.
No, in fact, it's funny because UFC 200 was kind of coming up and a million on, and it's like it's UFC 200. And there's going to be this, but it didn't have that same electricity that I thought was around UFC 100.
Fuck no.
But then all of a sudden now with it's like Conor, who has been the face of the company now. Even in his conversations, he's doing we had to fly out. And we had to get you a hotel. It's like, you're the UFC now?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden now he has this conflict, and now it's like Dana takes him off. He doesn't retire. The UFC's abusing me. Not allowing me to train.
And
so
what's your take on that, Frank? I mean, you're a guy you've been a UFC guy forever. Your boys with Dana, the Fertittas, Joe Silva got you into the UFC. Yeah. So when you see a guy like Conor, and you know the inside out of this game better than anyone in the world, when you see Conor do this stuff, what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, I think as far as having to do the marketing for it's part of the game. I guess I just came into accepted it. It's like, if you go to college, you're going to have homework. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, man, I don't have my weekends free. You're in school. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the name of the game, man. I'm at work, and man, my boss told me I had to stay afterwards. I'm like, you're getting paid, you know what I mean?
This is my only argument with that, Frank, is, he did more interviews for that world tour than any other fighter we've had in that short amount of time.
But he's also paid for it.
He's not paid for it.
No, I mean, but his pay at the end of the day,
he's getting paid no matter what, right?
Well, but they're taking that into account when they're doing the contract.
So let's say the Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar press conference, back then it's huge, right? Now social media, man, it's so big. If Conor tweets out something or a video, it gets more views than any of that stuff. Yeah. So to me, it's tough, man, because he is under contract. You are supposed to do that stuff. Right. But think about it. What he's done so far, the UFC PR team, you couldn't pay for this. You could not pay as much hype as he's done.
I think also he was talking about the fact that he's got the biggest challenge of his life physically with fighting a bigger, stronger man.
Who's now going to have a training camp.
Yeah. And I think
it's still a bad fight for him. I don't care. They go 12 weeks, he's still not winning that fight. I mean, the chances are, if you said I had to put money on it, I'd still put money on Nate. On our first podcast, I called it out. They said, hey, what do you think? And that was one of the fights that I had called. And I'm like, I think this for this reason. And I gave about the boxing of Nate Diaz as far as his waves, his movement. They're like, well, Rafael dos Anjos' kicks. I'm like, yeah, but they kick differently. Rafael's going to attack the leg, and he was able to land a lot of kicks on Nate. But as far as how
completely
Conor
different.
kicks, the karate kicking style, going to the body, it has its own pros, but then it doesn't have the same beating up the leg.
No way.
I'm like, and then as far as his movement, I'm like, I can see him winning the first round, and then just Nate coming in there and overwhelming him. And I'm still saying that Conor is basically a blue belt on the ground. You know what I mean? Like his fight with Chad Mendez, it wasn't that he did anything. They're like, oh, he's right on the ground. I'm like, okay, well, he got taken down 4 times.
He stayed in guard.
He didn't do it. You saw that. There was no hip movement. I'm like, his defense was
control.
To talk trash.
Yeah.
Basically, if that was his defense. It wasn't like, and then even when he got out, it was because Chad didn't have a proper training camp, and I think that he tried to make something happen and force it. His output on top wasn't that great, and then he
got
passes
tired.
the side control, goes for a top guillotine, which is a not very high percentage move. Instead of just staying on there and crushing him and just wearing him down, he tried to go for the home run shot and made a mistake. That's why but at least the Nate Diaz fight, he has it still. It's still, I guess, kind of a smart move, because if he loses again at 170, right?
Can't lose again, man.
Well, they lose at 170, goes to 145, because, I mean,
the
who's
gone.
I know, but
you lose 2 in a row?
Yeah, but
he gets choked out again?
But you know what, though? If he stays at 145, Edgar's waiting at 145.
And Aldo. And Aldo's
and is in shape.
Well, if they fight 100 times, I'm betting on Frank Edgar 100 times.
Really?
That's surprising.
Conor, yeah,
because he's going to grind him. He's going to just take him down.
Because as far as
it's a tough fight.
Well, his takedowns, his speed, and his mobility. He doesn't stand there. All those spin kicks.
Shots, though.
What's that?
Frank has been known to get hit.
Yeah, he does
Conor
take a
at
few
45
shots.
is a knockout.
No, he does hit. It takes, but as far as his movement and his speed and his takedowns,
tough to hit.
And then when he gets on top, and as far as Frankie uses a lot of lateral movement, right?
Probably
Spin
the best
kicks,
in the world.
hard to land a spinning thrust. You're going a guy that steps side
look
to
what
side.
he did. Look what he
It's
did
a
to Cub
tough fight.
Swanson. Cub Swanson is a killer, and he just jammed him
He
against the man.
dismantled him.
Is that
Yeah.
a different? Is that a different?
No, I mean,
I think Frankie. I think that's why. I mean,
it's a
think
tough
about
fight
it.
for
They don't
him.
even talk about it in UFC.
There's a
They
reason.
avoid bringing
There's
Frankie
a
Edgar's
reason.
name up with Conor McGregor.
there's a reason.
Because
Frankie's
I think
older,
that Joe
he's had
Silva
his time.
knows.
Yes.
They look at it and go, man, this is because if they go to the ground, and then on their feet, I think Frankie Edgar outboxes him there too.
He just doesn't. I don't think he hits as hard. He probably
No,
has
no.
better technique. He'll outproduce him round for round. But
I mean, it's hard enough though
not
that he
a
just
good
put Chad
matchup.
Mendes out.
But
You know what I mean?
but this is the only thing. If Conor stayed at 70, I hate the fight at 70.
But his fans can still say
the hope I
he's
have.
losing
There's
or
an
winning.
asterisk. The
Yeah.
hope I have. I'm eating the Conor Lucky Charms here. I think his first fight at 70, he was just trying to knock him out, power shots. He used up all his energy and then just got worked, right? We saw him panic when he shot that terrible double.
Yeah, he
And
knew.
then
I think he decided it'd be better to get
he
choked
wanted
than
out.
get knocked out.
I agree 100%. So then we saw that. So I'm hoping they've made the proper adjustments where this fight, the only way he wins, I think, is by decision. Sticking and moving, landing shots and moving as Diaz keeps coming forward.
And he's going to have to do the only thing, too, and I had brought up in our thing on the phone before fighting, is that for every step that Diaz takes in that fight, he's going to have to take 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
100%.
Oh, you mean
it's a
because
ton
he's
of movement.
because
He's going to have to move a lot.
shorter. He's
Yeah,
shorter.
and Nate, he's just going to walk forward. That he marches you down, that forward pressure, and just keeps
Exhausting,
peppering you
man.
and moving.
They break guys.
Yeah, it's
but
just-
you know the UFC brass probably better than anyone because you've had to deal with them so much. So I was on board with Conor when he's like, you know what, man, this is too much for me. I get ready for the biggest fight of my life. I'm not going on all these PR.
I relate with him.
So
I
I'm cool
understand
with that. I'm like, all right, your tweet will do enough to sell this fight. But then he tweets, I think late last night, oh, I'm back, guys. UFC 100, it's on. Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks, Dan, for doing this for the fans. Then this morning, Dana goes, that's not true. We never came to an agreement. So I feel like Conor's kind of pushing them into a corner and trying to get the fans to be like, yeah, he's back, to force their hand. And this is a play I'm not on board with. I think if you poke Dana too much, he's going to go, what? Fuck you.
I mean, also too, you got to look at the Fertittas. They have station casinos. Largest employer of casino workers in Nevada.
They're not going to be pushed around by Conor.
Well, and I think they know how to manage people and they identify. And you don't want to create a trend. We have control over the fighters right now. No one really steps out of line. Everybody pretty much does what they're supposed to do.
Because you can't.
Right. All of a sudden now you have Conor. Let's say he's able to kind of mouth off, step out of line, and then he's still able to get success from it. You're going to have to deal with now several more guys that try to step up to the plate. Where if all of a sudden you sit there and make an example out of Conor, that's the only problem.
I don't think you have any other guys who could do what Connor's doing. I don't think
Yeah.
there's one guy
I
in the
agree with
UFC
you.
who
Yeah,
can do
no.
it. Let's name a guy. If John Jones right now was like, fuck you, I need more money, they would probably be like, see ya, man.
Yeah.
I think Connor's the only guy who can do this. But
I think John might be pulled
after
up.
the antics this morning, man, I was on board. Then I saw him like, dude, well, now you're fucking with people's emotions. Because now the fans are like, wait a second, dude. We had your back. Now you're honey dicking and saying you're back.
Right.
And it's not really going down. So I think
My
it was a bad PR move on his part.
I wonder
for the
how-
first time in his career.
Yeah. He's been fighting how long, Conor? A while.
Wow, but he's been in the UFC about 3 years.
Yeah, but he's been fighting a while. I almost feel like when you that quick to retire, even though it might be theatrical.
Oh no, he didn't retire.
No, you just
He
wonder.
retired for a day.
You wonder how much more he wants to do.
Oh no, you're looking at it wrong, B. That has nothing to do with it. He literally just did that to scare Dana White, and then he came literally.
Right,
came
I'm
back.
sure-
It's not a retirement.
No,
that
it's not
doesn't
a
count.
retirement.
I think what you're trying to say though is like already if you're even willing to say those words,
Yeah.
what does that kind of mean about
Yeah, I
the
mean,
guy's mindset?
well, he's
there are times that's an example, but I think with Brendan that not in this one. I think it's a different bluff.
No, but he's tasting fame on a level that very few people do, and it's the first time in his life where he is a legitimate superstar.
Yeah,
that can have
Coming
that
off a
can
loss.
have that can have a softening effect. I'm not saying he's not training hard. I'm not saying he's not hungry. I'm not saying he doesn't want to fight, but I have to believe that
It's a stressful thing.
it's a stressful thing.
Think of the stress we have just even on our level of it.
Yeah.
Now start
I'm not even on
magnifying-
your level. You're
Yeah.
world champ, Frank. I mean, you're a superstar.
But I mean, it's still, you know what I mean? Like being there with the cameras, the phones, everything you say has to be measured and thought of. And then the next day you're like, well, you said this. You're like, yeah, but I didn't say it under that context.
Yeah,
I
but
had to say
Frank,
it,
Frank, think when we do an interview, I mean, we especially for heavyweights who have personality, we'll give good interviews. Conor has come up with magical movie shit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
he does.
exhausting.
Yeah, and his stuff is on, ESPN.
ESPN.
You know what I mean?
TMZ,
Dude, I was watching ESPN.
Yeah, TMZ covers the guy.
I was watching ESPN. They were covering LeBron James' game. Breaking news. It pops up. Conor McGregor not retiring, coming back to UFC.
Yeah.
Never seen that ever.
Yeah.
No one's ever done that.
When I
before.
saw him get in the octagon with Nate Diaz, I saw a different face. I saw a guy who was more concerned with essentially acknowledging the love that was surrounding him, and he was not paying attention to the guy in front of him. Now, that's a mistake that people make when they get intoxicated by the public embrace. You see it all the time. You see it with actors who start making $30 million a movie, and their movies suffer inevitably. You see it with pitchers.
Yeah,
you see it with athletes who get paid huge contracts they can't hit as well.
I don't think that's all Conor.
I'm not either.
I
I'm just
think the
saying-
UFC, he's such a mega star that they're literally using him for everything. I think that's took its toll on him.
Yeah.
So he couldn't train properly, and it's also him too.
Just the public embrace can be a very damaging thing.
So Frank, what do you do? You're Dana White. What do you do with Conor?
Man,
there's no UFC 200 main event. I mean, you want to talk about UFC 200 supposed to be the biggest of all time? Not right now. It's a stat card for the guys who are in it. We're like, man, that's a cool card. For the general public, like, where the fuck is Conor? Do we do John Jones DC?
Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and steal Richard's thought process on that. Do you mind?
That's your partner in crime.
By the way, the
Richard's a
podcast
smart
is
dude.
phone booth fighting, guys.
Great podcast.
Richard and I, we're talking in the car about this, and he brought up the best point so far I heard. He thinks that Nate Diaz saying that either I fight Conor or I fight nobody is actually a way for them to kind of save face and pull Conor back. Be like, well, we wanted to get rid of Conor. It's not us, but Nate, this tough street fighting, just scrapper, refuses to face anybody else. So
we're going to do him a favor.
We're doing this for Nate. We're not doing this as a Conor.
So, what do you do for the main
sense.
event? That's fine, but then how do you salvage UFC 200?
Oh, he's back on. That's what I'm saying. Like, Conor comes back on. They get Conor back on the card fighting Nate Diaz and save face because Nate won't fight anybody else, and we're going to do Nate a solid.
We owe it to
Nate.
I don't see it happening because I think now after this tweet this morning, Dana's going, you really want to do this? You think you have the power? We can tweet and we're just going to lay down. I like I said, I was on board, but if you know the UFC brass, they're going. Okay.
But there's a lot of money to be made on this fight, so I would not be surprised.
Money talks.
Money
There's
talks.
no bigger guy.
Money talks.
I don't know, man.
Because we all want to see it.
I think they put it back on there. I mean, you got people buying, plane tickets and making vacation time to get out there. I think that you'll anger the fans too much not to provide them with a certain.
I think they're going to figure it out.
They'll figure it out. And like I said, so far, the way to save face so they don't look like they just cower down to the power of Conor. And
Nate.
It's like, well, we're doing Nate a solid. You know what I mean? We would say,
Which they've never
screw
done
the guy.
before.
You know what I mean? But Nate, he took the fight on 9 days' notice.
We owe this
he
to
wants
Nate
his
after
fight.
all these years.
Yeah, we owe it to him.
Do you guys
Nate
think
and Diaz brothers?
Do you
They're
guys,
finally going to.